It always fascinates me when everyone hops on the bandwagon against dynamic queue that's not high elo. But see, the problem is, and I was thinking about this in the taxi ride back home from casting LCK last night, and I was thinking to myself, and it's really fascinating to me how Riot always talks about the massive community that they don't actually voice their opinion, right? Because they're not on Reddit, they're not on Twitter, they don't care about esports, they're just playing the game and having fun and blah 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 blah. Okay, well, if they don't care enough to voice their opinion, clearly they're probably not frustrated enough, and any sort of data shenanigans that you come out with or you say is existing relative to these people that don't voice their opinions, it probably doesn't matter anyway. You could literally make Zed have Mundo's kit and they probably wouldn't care because they're just playing the game for other reasons that the reasons that you're listing somehow affects them doesn't actually matter. And we've seen this in other games. We've seen it in StarCraft 2, where Blizzard single-handedly drove that game from fucking a mountaintop 6 feet under into a grave and nailed the coffin shut themselves. And now they try to fix it, and you can't. And we saw it in Dota 2 in some ways, and now we're seeing it in other games. And now with the release of Overwatch, there's a potential threat for the first time ever. I guess you could argue CSGO, but CSGO was never really pulling away from League, whereas this new game, which is hot on the market, is actually attacking all the other games on the market, and it has the potential to actually steal, a client base from, a MOBA, which isn't even the same genre, although I guess it is in some ways a genre because it's not totally an FPS, given that it is a little bit different, and it's, you have spells and you have all activists and whatever. I don't totally follow Overwatch, but I think that's the most fascinating thing, is that you can somehow use these people who don't voice their opinion as a crux to your argument against the people, the hundreds of thousands on Reddit that are voicing their opinion, and you can somehow say that the people who care about the game, the people who actually are following what's going on and can see decay, can see problems arising, are somehow more important than the people who can't even tell anything's happening. And you can't sit there and say, well, they can tell stuff is happening, they're just not saying anything about it. No, because you don't have numbers. You can't make assumptions like that. There was actually no way to accurately detect or, find data on said people. So the truth of the matter is you could have never removed solo queue, and those people never would have cared. You could have never added dynamic queue, and they never would have cared. And the reason that we know that they never would have cared is because you would actually have to be living under a rock and without internet to not realize that there is an esports community because it's advertised on the fucking client. So a quick Google search could actually pull it up. They talk about it in casts. They talk about Twitter. They show Twitter. It is impossible not to know that if you do have a concern with League of Legends, that there are outlets for you to voice that concern, and clearly they're not doing so because every fucking outlet is against these horrendous decisions that Riot's been making for almost 2 years. I remember when I first came into the sub, about 2 years ago to the date now, and that sub was healthy, it was friendly, it was nice, there was really just a lot of actual Riot love going on. And then somehow miraculously in that 2-year span, I feel like I went from StarCraft 2 to StarCraft 2, and it's just actually chaotic, and I don't know what to say about it. So that's all that my little rant is on fucking dynamic queue, and I don't know what the fuck else to say, but it's actually just stupid. And anything that fucking random Riot employees come out and say about dynamic queue and why it's no, your one opinion is not a goddamn council. This isn't like a fucking Supreme Court justice where 9 people are sitting that actually just know more about something going on than everyone else and somehow get to. This isn't the fucking Supreme Court. I don't understand how there isn't an actual council or a fucking a group of people that have to vote on these opinions. And even in which case we know from juries, okay, in the US court system anyway, I'm not too familiar with how European or Asian or Australian whatever court systems operate, but we know that juries can easily be swayed by the loudest voice in the room, and it is not always going to be, is someone innocent or guilty? That's why people say, it's out to the jury, or the jury could fuck up or whatever.